Hello everyone. So, welcome to this quote-unquote second part of the Trickster guide. That results out of something I said in the main guide I did a few months ago, but I didn't explain in detail, and that is how to aim as Trickster. Because I said something in the previous guide that was a little bit less aggressive in the German version, but a lot more aggressive in the English version, and that was learn to aim. But I didn't explain in detail how that works actually on Trickster. So here we are gathering some base information on what it is about aiming with Trickster and how you can probably get better. So this time we also do it a little bit different because I'm down here. All the clips I will show are up there, so you don't have my ugly face in your face all the time, and you can enjoy the actual clips and gameplay and guide a little bit more, which makes it a lot easier, I guess. And we have the cute turtle over there. So first of all, the question that is always asked, do you use Crosshair? I personally, yes, do most of the time. So I have a built-in desktop monitor dot crosshair, so I have a small little green dot on my screen, in the middle of the screen obviously. That is because my monitor only has a green and a red dot, and the red one is terrible if I chase survivors and I see auras or if I see generators, so I use the green one most of the time because it's easier to see. But you don't need the crosshair because honestly the hitboxes in Dead by Daylight are super generous in terms of hit detection, and the game is built around the fact that you don't have a crosshair. So it's a nice help, but it's not necessary. And sometimes I even play without, because I played a lot of, for example, Knight or Wesker or Nemesis or whatever, and I didn't have the crosshair active for these, and then I start a game as Trickster or Huntress or whatever, and then I just forget to activate the crosshair and I still play perfectly fine. So it's not necessary, but it helps mentally maybe a little bit. And yeah, some people actually accuse you of quote-unquote cheating if you use a crosshair. Me personally, coming from a generation where I played GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64 and had a black dot from a marker on my monitor to actually see where the middle of the screen is. Well, yeah, no, I definitely wouldn't say it's cheating. As mentioned, it's not really necessary, but it helps a little bit. It's not that big of a deal in my opinion. Throw methods. There are basically three types of throwing knives in the game: tapping, bursting, and barrage. I call them this way. If you want to call it something else, be my guest. It's just what I refer to, and I will explain right now what I mean by that. So tapping, one tapping knives gives you the most accuracy, but you're also a lot slower, obviously. Burst is like throwing like up to 3 knives, maybe even 4 sometimes, when you move around the corner. And barrage, just keep it going, spray and pray. Burst is pretty much explained quite simple. If you chase around counters and you want to throw a few knives to hit a survivor, then you stop immediately shooting again, put the knives away so you can catch up, and do the same at the next corner. There is not much use besides of that for burst shots as on the Trickster, so that's basically it. Tapping and barrage are a little bit more interesting in that regard. So let's start on tapping. One taps are the most accurate way of targeting, as already said, but they are obviously a lot slower than bursts or barrage, and you're also kinda slow in hitting health states, so it's kinda situational. Most of the time you want to tap, especially on long distances. Barrage, on the other hand, is best for close but not very close to mid-range, especially on open areas where your surroundings allow it. Like you have not too many high objects, you have maybe not a jungle gym in your face, and it also strongly depends on the map, obviously. Barrage is, for example, quite useless on Larry's Memorial because it's a pure indoor map and the open spots are quite limited, and even there are so many objects that you usually can't throw in barrage. But you can deal tons of damage super fast, but this, as mentioned, is very restricted and usually used on big open fields. Sometimes it's also possible in these maps, obviously. Actually, sometimes it's also very likely to use that, because sometimes it's just like survivors can't dodge because doors are closed, windows are blocked, or they block themselves or each other on pallets because they crawl over one after another. That's a perfect time to use a barrage as well. And also a little sub part of the barrage is the main event, which is basically a automated barrage, but a lot faster. You throw the knives obviously faster and also a little bit more precise, at least it feels like that to me, but it also could be my imagination. But personally the main event is a lot more precise than a normal barrage throw. So talking about range on barrage, I would decline 4 types of range for Trickster. Very close range, mid-range and long range. On close range, that's usually on your melee range as well, you usually don't want to throw knives. No matter if it's tapping, bursting or barrage, you usually have a huge problem if survivors are that close, and I will explain to you now why. If survivors are that close, you have a huge disadvantage compared to other range killers. Why is that? If you take Huntress for example, the Huntress headshot has a very huge hitbox. That means it's very forgiving to throw a headshot and still hit a survivor compared to the small hitbox that a Trickster knife has. The positive side on the Trickster knife therefore is that you can do a lot more trick shots than on Huntress, because you can shoot through small holes in certain objects or even windows when they are not blocked properly, like sometimes on Shack there are holes in the walls, so you can shoot through them, which you never could do as a Huntress. That's a huge bonus that only Trickster and Slinger players have, but it takes obviously a lot of practice to throw that, and it usually requires tapping. But on short range, or in very short range, very close range, it's a huge disadvantage because the small knives are basically missing the hitbox by far, because survivors can just run in loops around you and you probably will only hit a few knives out of 20, 15, whatever. So going on melee attacks on that very close range is a lot better than keeping throwing knives. Then you have close range. That's basically right out of melee range and maybe 2 or 3 meters apart from that. That's okay. And then from that onwards, mid-range is the perfect distance to throw knives in burst or barrage most of the time. As mentioned, it's restricted by surroundings, objects, map, but usually that's the perfect range to keep going, spray and pray, to fire as much as you can, to hit as much as you can. And lastly, we have long range. You will notice at a certain point that the knives fall off. I will come to that in a second in detail. At a certain range, knives get less precise because of the fall off, and that's the point where you go for tappings again, because that's long range territorium. Barrage is terrible, tapping can be amazing there. A short note on the knife fall off now. As you can see in this clip, I will aim at the top end of the barricades or whatever that is, jungle gym, and the knives are landing basically a few meters below. So in that way you see exactly knives have a fall off, and that makes it super difficult to aim on long range. That's why tapping and slowly closing in on your target is a lot better than just spray and pray. Exception is, for example, if that survivor is injured, the acceleration meter is full, he gained a lot of distance because he jumped through a window and got light, or he had sprint burst 99 and is just taking away from you, then for God's sake keep it going. If you got a main event, even use that, doesn't really matter, just take that down. If you have enough knives, obviously, or main event. Alright, next point is recoil control. That's something I didn't mention in detail in the guide as well. One thing ahead is I don't know exactly how that works on controller or gamepad, because I never played that much on gamepad because I'm using mouse and keyboard. But as it is similar to other shooter games on PC as well in terms of recoil, I assume it's the same as well for console. So if you look up a guide on how to control recoil on a gamepad, it should be perfectly fine as well. I'm sorry, I just don't have the experience to teach you on that. On mouse and keyboard it is quite simple, because most of the time you have just to simply pull down your mouse slowly. because the recoil is going up like a few pixels per shot. Using your mouse on a very minimalistic way to go down again usually does the trick, pun intended, and you can actually keep your goal in the area of effect of your knives. A simple way to practice that is, like I did in this video the whole time, go to bot games, hit survivors with knives until you get main event, so you need to hit 30 knives, so we remember from the main guide, and then you stand at a certain distance to a certain object, figure out a single point you want to hit, and then activate main event. And figure out if you can hit a single point all the time, or if you maybe need to practice a little bit more. Two things on that. First of all, yes, of course, main event is not used while standing on a standing target most of the time, but it gives you some kind of feeling how far you need to pull down the mouse to actually hit that point again, because it's different from mouse to mouse and from sensitivity to sensitivity, so you need to figure that out on your own, what works for you. Next part is the precision is partially also affected by how fast you're throwing knives. So from the first knife to the usually 8th knife, you usually get a little bit less precise and then get more precise again because of the Trickster building throwing speed. That's another reason to actually start chases on these in close or mid-range, because after the survivors get injured they get a speed burst, and then you can still have somewhat precise barrage shots to get a second six hits. God damn it, took me only 20 attempts right now. So yeah, to get that down. And last but not least, also your movement is important. One thing there, it's not affecting your precision in general. So it's not a quote-unquote realistic shooter like Valorant or Counter-Strike or Call of Duty or whatever, where your shots get less precise when you're moving, because you are using your shots in chase all the time, so it would be kind of stupid for the game to actually make your shots less precise. But what you can do is still using a trick that is also working in other shooters, and that is moving sideways around corners. And that sounds super stupid in the beginning, but hear me out. That is especially helpful on bursts around corners, but you can also use that in chases sometimes. If the survivors are wiggling left right all the time, you can abuse this as well. So what's going on is, when you go around corners, you usually do it while pressing W, obviously, because you were just running along a straight line, like around check. And then you turned left or right and you pressed A or D probably together with W to actually go around the corner. Now the tricky part comes in. What you can do is you already turn like 90 degrees, so you look in the direction that you want to look after you go around the corner, and you only press A or D depending on which direction you're running, and then you only press W as soon as you let go of the side key again, so you only go forward again. That helps you a lot on crosshair or not crosshair placement. It makes you a lot faster around corners if you got the timing right. It's super difficult to pull off at the beginning, and you will also see me not do that from time to time, but it saves you a lot of time in readjusting your aim during these chases. You can gain actually a lot of time by doing that, because you still are very close around the corner, but you still don't lose any time on readjusting your crosshair, and you maybe can hit an additional knife that secures an injure or a down, or even win you the game, depending on what situation you're in. Alright, that is all the tips I can give you for now, I guess. If you have any other ideas, tips, suggestions that helped you getting better at aiming on Trickster, please leave it in the comments. Same if you have any questions about this, I will gladly respond to all questions I can respond to, which should be quite easy because probably not many people are commenting. If you have any other ideas for guides or tricks you're maybe struggling on ranged killers, let me know, because I'm also planning doing stuff for other ranged killers now after this Trickster stuff is done, because right now I guess that's all that needs to be covered to have a successful start as Trickster main, or as Trickster player in general. You don't need to main him, obviously. If you like this video, of course, like it please, share it, comment on it. Would really appreciate that. So thanks for watching, and hopefully see you around next time.